Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Try Line in partnership with Socks. I'm Russ McCluskey. He's Phil Greenaway. We're still little and large. We've got another episode. We must have done okay week one, mate. How are you?
I'm really good, mate. Yeah, really, really good. Been a great week, and reading up on all the results and following up with some heads of rugby. It's been another fascinating week of rugby in the school world, and long may it continue.
Yeah, it's been mega, hasn't it? I mean, it was a big, big weekend that's just gone. There was obviously a couple of midweekers in as well. Some schools play, like we said before, might play on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Wednesday. Their senior games afternoon, whatever fits best. Obviously, the Friday night lights games as well that have started to come in thick and fast. That was a trend, wasn't it, that just started to take off. I'm trying to think, really, when we first did one. We did one down at KCS Old Boys a good few years ago. I was never involved in one at Hampton, but it's a brilliant, brilliant spectacle for not only the pupils involved, but their school community. It's a great chance for parents to get across as well, isn't it? You know, midweek doesn't necessarily work for a lot of mums and dads because they're working, but that kind of whole Friday Night Lights package is something I think we're going to see more and more of.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, isn't it? Especially if you can get two schools in a local derby in the local area. I think was it St Edward's Oxford versus Magdalen on Friday night, and I think they had over 1,000 people at the game, and you know that's magic, isn't it? And it also gives some people their weekend back, so they get the whole Saturday and Sunday. It gives boys a chance to recover if they're playing on the Sunday for their local clubs, and it is great spectacle, great for the boys to experience that environment of playing under a little bit of a different pressure in a different environment. Yeah, long may it continue. As I said, I think it's a really, really great environment for boys to learn how to cope with a bit more pressure and the different pressures that come from that. And if you get 1,000 people watching, you've got to be doing something right, haven't you, surely?
Yeah, and let's start there then, mate. Let's start that Teddy's Magdalen game because Teddy's right now 3 from 3, 6th in the table. I got in touch with Joe Winpenny actually at the start of the week, the head of rugby over there, and we mentioned him last week. And I said, mate, you know, it seems to be going really well there. He said, yeah, Oxford is blue. St Edward's with the win against Magdalen. Magdalen, he was that was slightly tongue in cheek because he knows I worked there for a wee while. But they came out of that game 37-10 victors on the Friday night, and as you said, in front of 1,000 people at the Iffley Road Stadium where Oxford University play their games, a ground steeped in history. I mean, phenomenal place. If you've ever been to go and see rugby there, you'll know that wooden stand there. So I can only imagine the sights with it full. I went to Oxford Brookes University and we used to play against Oxford University, I suppose in what they call varsity now, and we'd love to pack out that stand. But Teddy's going super well, mate.
Yeah, I mean they're doing it. You know, something's going right there, isn't it? They've obviously announced a link with Gloucester Rugby Club, and over the summer, I know that Wayne Thompson will be doing all he can to support that program at St Edward's Oxford, and clearly they're playing a decent brand of rugby. They went well at the Roslyn Park Sevens, the end of last year. You know, Joe and his team are doing a good job up there, and be interesting to see how they progress. You know, between now and half term, they've got some tough fixtures coming up, and be really interesting. But they're clearly doing something right.
Yeah, doing brilliantly well. And then we spoke about fixtures potentially being on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, and obviously Saturday has always been a day for rugby. But Sunday, there was an absolutely colossal clash, wasn't there? Seb Burr against Clifton, and oh my tries. Talk to me, mate.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Seb Burr again last week, didn't we? But just, the brand of rugby they play is just exceptional. And the weather, obviously, at the moment suits that on the hard grounds. And, they play from anywhere. They'll play whatever they see, and encouraged to do some great things. But Clifton were in that game, for long part of it. Clifton really sort of hung in and stuck in there. So, and again, I know that they play on one of the hardest circuits around. Clifton don't sort of run away from anybody. So just again, another classic game of schoolboy rugby that, had everything really.
Yeah, and with another enormous points total. So 54-34, that one ended up to Sedbergh. And having watched some of the highlights, the weather was amazing for it on the Sunday. It was great to see the lads run out in the tunnel of players, tunnel of subs. I mean, the atmosphere was absolutely fizzing. And you might look at that scoreline and go, right, 54-34. Where was the defence? What was going on? But actually, it was just levels of fitness. It was skill level. Some of the tries that were scored were outstanding. There was a real mixture of tries as well, from out wide to in the tight. The physicality was off the charts as well. The size of some of the lads out there. But yeah, at the moment, Sedbergh top in the table after 3 matches with an enormous points difference, but just topping it ahead of Thomas Riches. Again, we mentioned them last week, and the state school from the Gloucestershire area clinging on a fabulous win at home, 38-24 to Kings Worcester. Mate, superb to see them still in the mix.
Yeah, they're going well. They've got a good team up there. Reece Gwilym and Oliver Deacon, who I spoke to in the week again, about the rugby program. Just asked him what it was they were doing, what was happening there, and he just said they've just nothing but hard work. They've got their act together, organised their coaching, and got a great group of boys who are all in there working hard and all want to learn and all want to get better, and have all sort of been inspired by the coaches and by the program they've got on offer there. So it always had a good reputation up in the Gloucester area at Tommy's Riches, and always produces, some good players, and good for them. They've managed to keep hold of those boys into the sixth form and not lost them to elsewhere. And, really building on that success. And it's such a rugby heartland up there. It's such a great rugby area, the Gloucester combination and around that area. So it'll be really interesting again to see how they progress and what they do with the rest of their season. But they're off to a flyer.
Yeah, and it's interesting the point you make there, mate, because obviously the grammar school system is incredibly strong in that area. You got Pates, you got Crypt, who used to be a powerhouse. You've had players like Ryan PC, Clive Stewart-Smith come out of that system, along with many, many others. I've got a lot of mates, actually, I played with university who went to Crypt, so I know that school really well. But that is something that can happen, isn't it? An independent school could come in, they've tracked you, they've seen you, you're in the Gloucester pathway, let's say, and they come in and say, look, come over for the sixth form for those 2 years and play first 15 rugby at our independent school. So as you say there, it looks like Tommy Riches have managed to keep that squad together. We tracked them very closely a few years ago when I was at Kings in the under-15 Schools Cup, because they were motoring, and we thought, could they do it? Could they get to the final along with us? So we know they're an exceptional upper sixth cohort right now.
Yeah, they've got some great players in that, in that area. And it's nice for those boys to be, kept in that environment where they've grown up in, playing with their mates. And, as much as we're all for boys taking the opportunity to go to better their rugby or their academics, whatever it might be, for them to be able to keep hold of that group of players, and they've clearly got a good squad. It's great to see them all there, and probably reflects what's going on in, as we said, in some of those state schools, the Campions of this world and Northampton School for Boys, keeping hold of their players, and that's great, and that shows the quality of the programs that they're offering.
Yeah, a couple of other Friday night lights games from last week. We had Oakham at home to Woodhouse Grove. Oakham taking that 1-14. I remember seeing Oakham a few years ago at Twickenham in the under-18 Schools Cup final, get an unbelievable victory against Trinity, who I will come to shortly because I spoke to them only this morning. Trinity, who have been a powerhouse of first-team rugby the last few years. And again, Oakham just steeped in rugby history year after year, churning out good first 15s. So brilliant to see them up and running, going well.
Yeah, and they've got they run a brilliant rugby program as well. They've got great coaching from their under-14s all the way up. Glenn Gelderboom and Dotter Smith all still involved in that. Oakham, and Steve May has gone up there as director of sport and really helped tie them together. But they've always had a great rugby tradition, and like you said, played in Schools Cup finals, and it'd be really interesting again to see what they do with the rest of their season. And that's a tough place to go and win, isn't it, Oakham?
Yeah, oh, massively, mate. And, I'm a Midland man, and they've kind of dominated that Midland scene for a long time, haven't they, in terms of the rugby programme and the rugby profile. And there's some big, big schools, Uppingham, Stamford, to name just two. So they're always going to be in amongst it. And I reckon they'll be one of those schools after half term, because they've got great depth. And we spoke about this last week. You've got half term coming up. You've got St. Joe's Festival coming up. And we saw the draw for that actually be released this week. And it'll be interesting to see the other side of half term, particularly when the weather gets, let's face it, the weather is going to be pretty ropey at times in November and December. We know that. And right at the sharp edge of the Daily Mail Trophy, it'll be those schools who can call upon their resources and call upon their players. Now, I said I was going to mention Trinity, and people will have seen that Trinity Cranley score that we didn't mention last week come through from a couple of weeks ago. And they'll be scratching their heads going, well, what's going on there? And this Trinity group as well are in upper sixth, I should say, who got through to the under-16 Roslyn Park final against Sedbergh. So they certainly know what they're doing and how to play. But having spoken to George Kimmins over at Trinity this morning, he said they've got 5 or 6 injuries to literally 5 or 6 of their very best. And it just goes to show, doesn't it, on that? You know, you see a scoreline and you think, oh, what's going on with that rugby program? But we've got no idea. It could be concussions, it could be knees, ankles, it could just be lads out for the complete term. You just don't know, do you, mate?
Yeah, you never know what's going on. You never know what, if some boys are involved in the academy pathways and they've been pulled out by their clubs, or to play in Prem Cup games, or to play in United games on the Monday night in that league. I remember a year at Dulwich where our first 15 was looking really, really strong. We lost 3 boys, out the exit door post GCSEs, and then we lost 5 boys to really serious long-term injuries, and that decimates half your squad. So as much as those boys did a great job stepping in, stepping up, and really doing the shirt proud, it can be tough.
Yeah, massively. And like you say, there's always a story behind the scenes. It's quite easy to go onto schools rugby or have a look on social media or on a school website and have a look at a result. And many people would have raised their eyebrow at that Trinity Cranley result from a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we did as well when it was sent through to us. But like I say, there's a genuine story behind that, and we just hope that Trinity get that squad together soon and those boys return from injury, because as I say, over the last kind of 5-6 years, they've been in the conversation as one of the top rugby programs in the country. And talking of which, we gave Cranley a bit of a shout out last week and we said they're always around the top of the Daily Mail Trophy League when it gets to December, finishing, a close second last year behind Clifton. They hosted Mill Hill this Saturday. And again, I watched some of the highlights of this on social media. My word, what a game. 24-19 to Mill Hill. They'll be absolutely delighted with that result. And I know that you spoke to Chris Bajak over at Mill Hill.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris's view was that, they've just trained really well over the last 2 weeks as a squad. They were, said they were humbled by Northampton School for Boys a few weeks ago, and the boys had all sort of taken responsibility for that, and have trained really, really well. Look, they were under the pump. They were 12-0 down in that game, and Chris, by his own admission, said if Cranley had got another one at that stage, then they could have been under real pressure. But super proud of the intensity that they showed to get back in the game, and and eke out a good victory away from home. That will give them great confidence to go up onwards and upwards from there. Again, it just shows the how tight it is at the top of that table, and just also how unpredictable schoolboy rugby can be at times. But that is a fantastic result for Mill Hill away from home down at Cranley, who, up until this point, I don't think they conceded a point themselves. And that would have been one hell of a game to be at.
Oh, mate, it was unbelievable. Some of the footage I saw, and I think Mill Hill probably had a look at themselves at 12-0 down and said, right, what's our strength here? Where are we going to score points? Where are we going to get the edge over the home team? And the size of the pack, they were direct. Their forward runners off 9 were unbelievable. A lot of sides obviously adopting, and it's well known, isn't it, that 1-3-3-1 pattern. Like lots of sides worldwide play it. But actually, it looked at times that they would have 3 or 4 forwards off 9, almost in a flat line, and the scrum half would just pick the one that he wanted to hit and the one that potentially was going to make the most yards. And I love that, mate. I love that flat 4 or flat 3 setup. They also went to the catch and drive on the line out. And I think you and I were talking, weren't we, off camera just before we hit record, about how the catch and drives come back. And from a bloke who loved a line out, loved coaching it, loved being a part of one, listen, I don't mind seeing it. I love seeing her driving more.
It's a real strength in the game, isn't it? And if it's something that you do and do well, it's very, very tough to defend against, the catch and drive. We, under Simon Thomas at Dulwich, had a great 3 seasons of, catch and drive is a real strength of ours. And, we'll come on to the other game in a minute with the Wellington Harrow game, but, the catch and drive in that game seemed to dominate as well. And it's making a return, as well as teams still playing a hell of a lot of rugby. And if you're eking out penalties here, there, and everywhere, and you can kick to the corner, and that's a real strength of yours. The defence have got a decision to make. Do they go up in the line out and try and nick the ball at source, or do they force you to try and throw not straight? Do you stay on the ground? Do you try and smash it? Do you try and sack them all with one man? It is really, really tough to defend unless you've got all your ducks in a row and you know exactly what you're doing. And even then, So the size of some of these schoolboy packs now, incredibly difficult to defend. And even if you do manage to defend it and bring it down to the floor, they're still 5 yards from your line, and the pick and go game. And then you narrow the defence up, and then it's on to play wide. And we've seen those scores happen over the last 3 or 4 weeks, where we've either scored from the catch and drive, we scored from the pick and go, or it's been a crossfield kick, or they've shifted the ball wide to space where we've narrowed up the defence. So I love the catch and drive. Never got on the back of one myself, but I think it's a great ploy to have in the game, and it also encourages the boys to look for that space and understand the game and their strengths, and when the space is on to move it and when to keep it tight. So I think it's a great thing. You saw England women score from 22 metres out of the weekend with one, so it's in the top game, and it's good to see it back in the schoolboy game.
Yeah, I have 2 points to make on the catch and drive. The nuance of defending it where the entire defensive line just takes a step back. Did you ever employ that one? I mean, we played around with that for a wee while. We knew, and funnily enough, it was against Trinity a few years ago, and we had a good first team. They had an outstanding first team that went on and won the school's cup. And I knew their coach at the time, Ian Kench. I know him really well. You know him really well. And I said to Kenchi, I said, I know you're going to try and drive us. You're going to try and bully us up front. And I thought, do we? Do we just do that one where you speak to the ref beforehand? You go, look, ref, just to let you know, we're going to be taking a step back. But it's a little bit messy, isn't it? I've always been a fan of get up, try and mark them, try and disrupt it in the air. I think that's the best place, because once certain schools get down and they get their feet on the ground, you've got no chance, have you, really, from 10 metres out, 15 metres out. And then just on that, to your point, I can't stand a back running in and joining it. I can't stand it when the centres fly in. You wouldn't be getting anywhere near it. I wouldn't let you. I'd be holding on to it for dear life.
Yeah, look, I was at the New Zealand All Blacks game, the World Cup quarter final the other week, and South Africa went with a 15-man lineup and drove the Black Ferns 40 metres down the pitch. It's such a strength. What would I do? Who knows? Who knows? But I think I'm a fan of getting up and competing at the front, and at least make them throw it over the top, and then organise a sack from there if you possibly can, or however you organise to try and disrupt that, get them turned towards the touchline and try and force them out of play, or hold them up. You see people trying to swim through the mall these days and hold up, which is something that you see schoolboys do, and if they can do it, it's fantastic. But trying to stop it at source, I think, has got to be the best way, or even don't give away penalties.
Yeah, that's stopping it at the source, isn't it? Don't give away a penalty where a fly half or a fullback can kick you into a corner, no doubt. And then just finally on the Cranley fixture, I don't know if you've come across this, but there's nothing more eerie. We played Cranley when I was at Kings. We had them as a block for a couple of years. Took a first team down there, and we got the win, actually, but similar to Mill Hill. We were down, and then we just had the second half to end all second halves and just got going. But nothing more eerie during the warm-up when you're out on that first team pitch at Cranley on your own, because they go and warm up somewhere else, don't they? They've got that paddock in front of the pavilion where they do all their warm-up there, then they walk over the bridge, and you're like, hang about, what's going on? And our lads from Wimbledon were like, so should we be playing at Kingsway? Should we have been playing at school? And I'm like, no. I think they're around. Oh, there they are. You can hear them. But yeah, that is quite disconcerting the first year you go down to Cranley, isn't it?
Yeah, I think anything you can do to put the opposition off, then it works in your favour. I remember Andrew Stanley, when I first got to Hartpury, he used to be a fan of flooding the opposition changing rooms. Thank God that's gone out of the game now. Now he's in charge of rugby at Dean Close. Although I'm sure Stan's still got a few tricks up his sleeve from his old Gloucester days. Yeah, very disconcerting, isn't it? Little things like that. The change in environments for pupils, and again, all part of their development process. The grounds you go to, getting used to the environment, getting used to the conditions. When I used to take the 15As down to Wellington, it was almost a mile and a half walk down to the pitch. All of those things. Home advantage, away disadvantage. You've got to try and turn those things into a super strength for yourselves if you're going on the road and experiencing those different environments.
Yeah, one of the best I ever saw, actually. We were away at Marlborough College, and we'll come to them in a sec. They had a belter against Radley College, but we were away at Marlborough, and up from the change rooms, you go up quite a few steps, actually, up to their first team pitch. And our captain at the time, Casper Piplado, I don't know if he's listening to this, he's out at Brown University now, tearing it up in America. Great. He was a fantastic captain. And he chatted to the boys. Roger and I hadn't noticed this, but he just knew that the whole school was going to line those steps. And he knew it was going to be absolute silence as they go up to really unnerve the boys. And he spoke to the boys down in the changing room. He said, you do not say a thing. We're going to walk slowly, together, unified up through that steps. And again, you talk about eerie moments, but it was brilliant and it was powerful. And that's what schoolboy rugby is all about, isn't it? Those moments. Those lads will be telling that story for 10, 20 years to come, won't they?
Yeah, I remember going to Blackrock College, when I was at Colston's, and we were the first side to sort of go over there and play them. And again, you arrive at the college, they've got all the international caps they've ever had on the walls, and then they've got all the team trophies that they won on the walls. And you walk down through this corridor, and it's almost like the whole of the school is against you, and the whole of Ireland is against you. And then at the end, you come up and there's a cross above the steps where you walk out onto the pitch, and it's like, well, if the school and the island isn't enough, we've also got God on our side. Walking out onto that pitch, it genuinely took us 15, 20 minutes to sort of get our heads in the game and realise, what sort of environment we were playing in. But, that is an experience that happened to me 30 years ago, and I still remember it like it was yesterday, and it brings hairs on the back of my neck now.
Love it, mate. Stories. It's why we play sport, isn't it? You can say win, lose, or draw, the trophies, the accolades, but it's for the stories years later. That's why you play it. You've mentioned Harrow Wellington. Mate, I'm going to let you dive into that one because, again, absolute points fest and an enormous victory for Welly away on the road.
Yeah, I mean, where do you start with it, really? You know, two absolute cracking teams going at it. Harrow have been so successful over the past few years, and James Melville and his team up there doing a great job. Academy players all over the park, left, right, and centre. And I think there was probably four driving more scores in that game. It seemed to ebb and flow, a huge amount. An intercept, I think, took Wellington, two scores clear at the end. Otherwise, it was nip and tuck in that game, and they could play that game the next week, and the result could be the other way around. That's how good those two sides are. I think, playing up at Harrow is always an absolute privilege, and fair play to the Welly boys going up there and getting a win. I'm sure they'll have been absolutely delighted with that, and hopefully sets them up for a good run at, the rest of the season. We know that Harrow will bounce back. We know that they've got strength in depth. They've got a great set of players up there. We know they play a great brand of rugby, and they'll be back.
Welly now in fourth position, just outside the top three, just behind Northampton School for Boys, who we'll come on to in a sec. And no doubt you're going to see a side like Wellington College in the conversation at the sharp end of this Daily Mail Trophy season. It looks like they're going to be right there, right in amongst it, mate. And so they should be. Brilliant programme there. Lots of rugby, a school synonymous with it. One of my best mates has had two lads go through that programme. They've gone on to play for Scotland, for Bath, for Harlequins. It's just the pedigree of boy they're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll have faced different challenges over the past few years with, the introduction of football into the school and, sort of fully co-ed school now, isn't it? And they still managed to produce some fantastic rugby teams. They've still got, lots and lots and lots of boys playing, from the under 14s right there through to the seniors, and they just keep playing rugby. They're just steeped with tradition. The boys really want to play for that first team shirt. I think we've always got to remember that they are just, still schoolboys, and they're still studying, and they're still probably involved, loads of other commitments around. But when it comes to putting on that shirt on a Saturday afternoon, they really, really care about it. And the skill set that they show, you saw some of the highlights on social media from their game the previous week. Their catch pass skills, crossfield kick, their carries, offloads, their accuracy at ruck time is just phenomenal. It's a great job they're doing there over at Wellington. Again, always a really, really, really tough, but welcoming, but really tough place to go as the opposition. And you always know you're in for a really tough game. You always know they're going to challenge you, in a different way, different shape or form. Whether it be, offloading, whether they go wide off first phase. We were always terrified to kick to their back three. They always had a back three who could hurt you. So, they'll be one to watch for sure.
My mate's son won Roslyn Park Sevens, which is just one of the hardest things to win, isn't it, in school rugby, that 2-day event. And I remember watching day two. We'd finished, fortunately, we had a half day at King's. We broke up for Easter, and I just walked through Wimbledon Common Golf Course down to the Sevens and caught up with my mate Gav. And I've described it since as they won that tournament. They beat Millfield in the final, and they won it on defence. The heart. They didn't have any massive lads. They didn't have any electric pace. They had a very good game plan. They had a very good kickoff. but they won it on heart and defence and the belief. And you spoke about the shirt, and I think a lot of these schools that we're talking about, boys look up through the school, don't they? And they wait until they get that first 15 shirt, whether they're 16, 17 or 18. And it's a real honour and a real privilege, but it gives them almost that superpower and that belief that they're going to go out there and they're going to win big games of rugby. And there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, there is, and those lads will be in boarding houses together. They'll spend evenings together, and they'll probably be talking about that game, the weekend's game from the Monday onwards. Being not much else sort of on their minds other than playing for the school on the following Saturday. So those boarding schools do a great job at just engendering that spirit around the school and the first team jersey. And I think aligned to that is the coaching programs and the rugby that they're playing. Schoolboy rugby just looks brilliant at the moment. As I said, the standard they're playing. And then when you add in that sort of desire, that never say die attitude that you are playing for your first team shirt and you're playing for the whole of the school and school community, and people are going to be asking you questions on a Monday morning, what happened? It means a lot.
And people will be listening to this pod now, and we've said it over and over again, that the spectacle and the schoolboy rugby that we're fortunate enough to watch and see, and the games we go to live and the ones that we see on social media. But actually, people listening to this pod are going to get that opportunity because next half term, the little and large boys, we're on tour, aren't we? We are going to be visiting some schools where Sox is going to be putting on some live streams of these fixtures, and we can't wait to be commentating on them, can we, mate?
No, I'm genuinely really, really looking forward to it. It's going to be fascinating to get out to different schools and watch the rugby. I won't lie, part of me wishes we were doing it in September and October where the weather was nicer. So, we might see a bit more rugby. But, I don't think the schools will tend to stop playing the brand of rugby that they're playing, as the weather turns. And I think with a few schools playing on 3G surfaces, etc. now, that the brand of rugby is going to be outstanding. Really, really excited to get along to some of these schools and just see the talent on show. See the dedication and the heart from all these pupils while still remembering their schoolboys, and one of them might have had lessons in the morning and they might be doing a drama rehearsal the following Sunday and all those bits and pieces. So just remembering that they're kids, but producing the quality of rugby that they're producing, I just think it's, I'm really excited by it, mate.
I think we've got a Friday Night Lights game booked in, fingers crossed. We've got a Tuesday afternoon game as well booked in. And as you say there, for both of those midweekers, the lads on the pitch who are taking the field, taking battle for their school, will have had lessons, won't they? They will have had a full day of school. They'll be thinking about their A-levels, their IB, their university, their UCAS. And it is remarkable what they put out when they pull that shirt on and they're representing their entire school community. It really is. Just a school we spoke about last week at length, and a school that's very proud about their rugby. NSB, another win against Kingsmack, 33-14, which leaves them third in the table, very closely behind Tommy Ritchie's and Sedbergh. And it looks like they are genuinely there to stay this term and will actually be vying for that top spot. We definitely see them doing that. I think at the moment, mate, I mean, it's very early on, isn't it, to say this and call this, but points difference could be a factor, couldn't it?
I think it's absolutely going to be a factor. Yeah, I think it certainly is. I think, Northampton School for Boys went and had a good win against Ipswich. Ipswich then have turned over and, beaten Campion this weekend, 19-14. Campion were a school we were mentioning again last week. It's really, really tight, but definitely that points difference, in terms of who's on your fixture list. I think that's going to be really, really key come the end of it. And that's why I think, I alluded to it last week. That's why this is such a great competition, because it is going to go down to the wire, and it is a test of your squad, it's a test of your program, all the way through from September to December. So the longevity of the league, I think it makes it, a proper test of your program, and it's not just on those sort of one-off midweekers, where you might play 5 games to sort of get to the Continental Cup final. So I think this will really, really tell us who's been the most consistent team across Michaelmas term.
Super, super excited to see how NSB continue playing. And as I said before, that Kingsmack team are no slouches themselves. And then final Friday night game that we were keeping an eye on was our friends down at Seaford College. And I'd actually spoken to Christian at the start of this week. They got a win 20-12 against Taunton. But actually, we were talking about the depth of their programme last week, and he gave me a little bit more information on that. They're now putting out 4 senior sides. First time this year they've put out a 4-15, which is remarkable. But they're putting out week in, week out an ABC at all their senior age groups as well. So under 14 upwards there. tremendous effort. Sean Thompson, head of rugby down there, somebody I worked with at Hampton for a short time. And I think he was telling me that on Saturday, to get everybody out playing, they ended up playing 5 or 6 schools in one of those incredible combination blocks going on. But hats off to everybody down at Seaford, and Christian loving his start down there on the South Coast.
Yeah, and hats off to every head of rugby out there, across the country who, fight really hard to get their pupils fixes, week in, week out. And we were very blessed on the London circuit to play the big schools, but the challenging ones were when you had to sort of mix those blocks and play 3 or 4 different schools, and you never quite know what does your A team match up with that team, and you're playing a C team against another school's B team, so it's all a bit of a guessing game at times. And it'd be really easy for heads of rugby just to not play on those weekends for those D team, E team fixtures. So I just think it's testament to all the all the hard work that they're doing. Selling rugby is a really viable option for pupils. And once they've selected it, it's only right that we give them an experience and get them out playing the game as much as we possibly can, and providing those sort of learning opportunities and those opportunities to experience getting on a bus and going to an away game, and those experiences of, playing at your home ground with your parents and your family and your friends there watching you, and as long as you're out there giving your all, that's all that matters.
Yeah, you sat in your house, your boarding house, you sat in your tutor group, you sat in your English set, maths set, and it might be that, a 16A player is talking to a 16C player about their fixture against Seaford or about their fixture against Dulwich or Kings. They've played against the same school, they've represented their school, and they've just got that shared story, and that is what sport fundamentally is all about. And let's face it, no sport quite like rugby to create a few stories, a few tries that were scored, a few driving mauls, a few unbelievable tackles. Mate, I've seen a few C&D team games, and some of the hits that go in are just truly unbelievable, aren't they? It ain't a game of basketball for those lads.
Yeah, and I think what we tend to forget is that, those boys will play against each other every year, unless they move up or down teams. But by the time you get to the sixth form, if you're in the fourth team or if you're in the first team, you're playing against people from other schools that you've played against probably for 3 or 4 years. So you know them really well. And those little rivalries do crop up against each other. And it's just great that they continue, and you can get those kids out, playing and running around and just, really embracing, the game of rugby and the life lessons it can teach you. But also those little rivalries must be absolutely amazing, particularly if they've been to the same prep school and all of a sudden, one of you's gone to Wellington, one of you's gone to Harrow, and you're playing in the under-16 D team game or in the under-16 A team game or the first team game. Those little rivalries that we just don't see as members of staff. We're not privy to all of that information, but I can tell you it certainly goes on.
Yeah, big time, big time. And we're just going to mention 2 more schools in the top 10. So we've got Stowe School, who are flying after a win against Oakham, a win against Stamford. They had a big win against Solihull on the weekend, and Henry Pollock's old school. If you've listened to our Little Lodge pod previously, the original Little Lodge pod, you'll know that I mention Pollock from time to time and Stowe from time to time. I'm still not bitter about it, mate. But yeah, his old school going seriously, seriously well. And the man himself actually seen at London Fashion Week, I believe, this week just gone. I saw on his social media. So hopefully he's keeping his eye on rugby. But another big win for Stowe there. And then I know that you've been speaking to Matt Gold over at Abingdon, who are also doing really well at the moment.
Yeah, another great win for Abingdon in a really tight game against Bloxham, and Goldie was super proud of the lads and how they stuck at it. Really, really tight game, nip and tuck all the way. I think it finished 30-24, but Goldie said it was a great comeback from their lads, and they had 2 penalty kicks at the end to win the game, which is great to see as well. People are still kicking the goal in this day and age, particularly in the schoolboy game, and kind of understanding schoolboy pressure and kicking a penalty for goal there's nothing wrong with it in our game. Just fantastic to see. Just a really tight game of schoolboy rugby that's gone down to the wire. One team will go away delighted, one team will go away, disappointed, but hopefully not too disappointed because they've put on a great show.
Abingdon really well, haven't they? They've gone Reeds, Eton College, and now Bloxham. They've got RGS High Wycombe that looks to be another Friday night or Friday afternoon game coming up. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on. And this week, mate, it's been a belter talking about all the first 15 rugby. It really has. We love it, don't we? Well, hopefully we're quickly becoming anoraks around it. I've never been on the schools rugby website as much as I am now. Spying fixtures, looking at scores, looking at form. It's just brilliant. We've been so fortunate, and huge thanks to Sox for the partnership and giving us this opportunity. Just a couple of pleas from us. Get your results in. Get them in. If you see an anomaly, if you see something that doesn't seem quite right, get in touch with Sox. We want an up-to-date, we want an accurate league to discuss. And I know that actually from a point where Kings at the moment are looking and thinking, hang about, should we be a little bit higher? And I've had some parents and boys I used to coach get in contact. We're getting on that. Of course, hey, listen, you leave the teaching profession, the parents still get in contact with you. There's no hiding place. You can run and hide, but you can't really hide. And then the other plea really is to share this pod with your school community. You know, share it with the parents. If you're a teacher listening to it now, share it with your parental community. Share it with the players as well. We want them to hear their shout out. We want them to be proud of what they've done, and we want them to know what is going on in what is an amazing competition. Like I say, we think 168 schools, are we right in saying that, Phil, this year, which is a remarkable figure. And it's just awesome to see how you stand, how you're getting on, and to see where your program's at.
Yeah, absolutely. Share it as far and wide as you possibly can. There is so much good stuff happening out there, and we really want to shine a spotlight on that. The kids you get out there every Saturday, as I said earlier on, they're playing a musical instrument. They've just failed a chemistry test, or they've just passed a maths test. They've got all those other things going on in their life, and we just really want to celebrate, the week in, week out fixtures that happen every single Saturday that lots of people might not be aware of. There is so much good stuff happening around the country rugby-wise, and we really want to celebrate that as much as we possibly can. Celebrate that pupil where there's been injuries in the first team, and all of a sudden the 13 prop is playing loosehead for the first team and doing a good job and supporting his school, and getting out there and running around and playing rugby with his mates on a Saturday. It's just fantastic to see, and all the time and the effort that parents take to go and watch their kids, and that heads of rugby put in from Monday to Friday for the games on Saturday, and then they start again on Sunday, planning the following week. So it's a big shout out to everybody involved. It's a wonderful, wonderful program from top to bottom, and we really want to shine a light on how great a product it is, and it's just a real celebration of that whole school rugby community coming together.
And we're going to be looking for a few brave souls to come on as well. Next week we will definitely have one, if not two guests. So if you fancy coming on, a little comment about how your first team's going, how you're travelling in the Daily Mail Trophy, do get in touch with us. LinkedIn, Instagram, all the usuals. If you're fortunate enough that you've got our phone number, send us a WhatsApp. We'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Another load of exciting games coming up this weekend as well, Russ. I mean, it just doesn't stop, does it? The fixtures ahead this weekend, some absolute classics out there again. So we're really, really looking forward to what happens this weekend. And I've been Lil, he's been Large. This has been Beyond the Try Line in association with Sox. Please like, please subscribe, and please share as much as you possibly can. Take care. Have a great weekend.